I'm witnessing a lot less laughter in our world, and I think we need more laughter.
So let's get back to the point where we're coming together in a good time and not necessarily out of tragedy.
They say that it's never good to take sides during an argument at the dinner table, but it's actually the best time to take sides. So get those dishes, load up the sides, and run away.
Very true, Beth. Very true.
Welcome back to Wellness Wednesday. My name is Beth Gustin, a licensed professional counselor here in Colorado, and I'm with my co-host, Robin Ennis, a licensed clinical social worker, also here in Colorado. And I don't know about all of you, but this political climate is getting really hot, and I think it's getting hotter every day. And so we thought that we would take a few minutes and talk about how to cope with upcoming election stress, political climate stress, and all the things that political climates bring up. Whether it's challenges getting along with your friends and family, whether it's your own stress of trying to balance being informed and unplugging your TV for the rest of your life, we thought we'd talk about that. So that is our topic for today.
Yes, not to make light of the topic, but when you said unplug the TV for the rest of your life, that's what I feel like sometimes, Beth.
That's why I said it.
Yes, exactly. After listening to the news, I'm like, oh, wow. I think we talked about this in the past, how, there's certain topics that can be controversial or cause different reactions from people. And politics is definitely one of them. And we're in the swing of it. And so I've noticed amongst myself, like I mentioned with my own reaction, but also too amongst clients on my caseload, the stress that can arise triggers, right? If you've had certain adverse experiences, even in your childhood or adulthood, and listening to the different issues that candidates are talking about, that can be triggering. So it's just really important to be mindful, going back to the techniques that we talked about before. Okay, so what's happening for me right now? What's triggering me, and how can I be able to support myself through whatever it is?
And I really appreciate the fact, Robin, that you brought up that certain topics, within the political talk can be triggering as well. And I'm thinking about the current candidates who are running for president and how there is a lot of unnecessary dirt slinging going on. And there always is in a political climate and during an election year. But I think it's really important to be aware of not only what are your triggers, but how do you know you're being triggered? So what are your signs you're getting stressed out? What are the signs that you need to set boundaries with friends and family, set boundaries with yourself? One thing I will recommend to my clients, and I don't think I'm alone in this, is if you're going to stay informed, which is important, I think, then limit how long you listen to or watch the news. So is it like half an hour a day? Is it, half an hour every other day? If you're trying to listen to both sides because you want to be informed, limit how much you listen to the other side that you don't agree with, because your blood pressure can skyrocket and that can cause health problems. So it is finding that balance that works for you.
I agree. It really is always a balance. And you mentioned mudslinging. And so that it's always good to get both perspectives. Yeah, if you're listening to a side that may have opposing views, and there may be a lot of mudslinging because there is on both sides, like Beth said, recognizing when you're starting to reach that peak of stress, because it can raise your blood pressure. So your heart may start to race, your hands may start to shake, your chest may get tight, you may feel tightness in your neck or butterflies in your stomach, whatever it may be. Doing a body scan to be really aware of it so that it won't impact your health adversely, and limiting, like Beth said, the amount of news. So if you listen to the news every single day throughout the day, maybe instead of every day, every other day, whatever it may be, it's always good to be informed to a point where you're understanding the issues and where each candidate stands. But again, it's making sure that you're able to handle and cope with what's going on. Because a lot of the election, the reason that it can spark anxiety or fear is the unknown. We can hear where candidates fall on certain issues, but we don't necessarily know the outcome of what will happen in the election. And for a lot of people who already have pre-existing health conditions like anxiety or depression, it can exacerbate it. So it's just being mindful about that.
The other thing I think about that goes along with what you just said, Robin, is, I don't know about you, but most of us have notifications turned on for many apps that we have on our phones. And if you do, and you subscribe to more than one news source, you can get bombarded with headlines all day long. And depending on your threshold of what you can tolerate, that can kind of keep us at that elevated, stressed out state, depending on what the headlines say and what our beliefs and views are. And so I've often recommended to clients turn that off, turn notifications off, or put them in like a digest mode, do something so that you're not seeing that randomly throughout your day, because that can also help reduce your stress if you're not seeing that.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. I was just focused on the TV, but you're right. Because as you were saying that, Beth, it made me think of how the news app on Apple will pop up with updates every so often throughout the day. I like that, turning notifications off or grouping it some way. And then going off of that, because it made me think about emails too. So designating, if you subscribe to certain political emails, designating a folder, to those emails so that you could read them one at a time or whatever it may be, so that it won't be completely overwhelming.
The other flip side of this conversation I just thought about is I know some people who want to get more involved in politics. And so I know we're talking about how to reduce our stress with the headlines and the news, but I also think about those who want to become more active in the political arena in whatever way they can. And so if that's something you want to do, which I think is important if that's your thing, I think it's good to do some research and figure out what political groups are local to you and what ways can you volunteer. And even within that, you're going to meet people who are going to disagree and have different values and different views than you. So I think a lot of the same stuff applies as far as setting boundaries with people that you're interacting with and being mindful of how you volunteer your time in a political way. But if you're looking to get more involved, a number of my clients actually want to have a voice and want to create change. And so they're looking at ways they can do that that feels comfortable and tolerable to them. Whether it's making phone calls, whether it's working on a local person's campaign, there's lots of opportunities out there. And it's, again, finding that balance.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And that can be a form of coping. I would imagine, Beth, that helps people feel like they have a voice.
It does.
Yeah, I could see volunteering. I like how, Beth, you mentioned boundaries because, we and I have talked about this in previous episodes. And so it really is important when talking about politics or getting involved is setting boundaries for yourself and then respecting other people's boundaries. Because yes, nobody's going to disagree with you. Even if you do belong to the same political party, people have differing views in regards to that as well. That made me think about the dinner table and setting boundaries within your family. I have a few people on my caseload who have differing views with friends or their family, and so they tend to be triggered in that way. So that's where boundaries can come into play too. Sure, with your family, you may feel like you're able to have your voice heard, but making sure that it's in a respectful way where everybody's feeling like they're being heard.
I agree. And they say that it's never good to take sides during an argument at the dinner table, but it's actually the best time to take sides. So get those dishes, load up the sides, and run away. Because no one's watching you because they're arguing.
Yes. I like that. Very true, Beth. Very true.
Sorry, I had to throw a joke in there because it's political, so we have to lighten a little bit.
So that's good, right? Because at least for me, I feel like humor does lighten the mood. It makes a serious situation become less serious, right? I think that humor is a good antidote in life. There's so much adversity that is happening in life, and I think that it makes it easier to cope and deal with things. So I like how you brought in humor.
I do think it really helps. And I don't know, I'm witnessing a lot less laughter in our world. And I think we need more laughter because I think not only does it have a lot of physical health benefits, but it also has a lot of emotional and mental health benefits. And we are not going to agree on everything. And the more heated the political climate gets and the more charged things get, the less manners we tend to have.
Right.
And so I think if we can find ways to remember that we are all human, it's okay to disagree. And if we can bring in laughter, it's going to help keep our relationships healthy.
Right. And I just want to add to that, making sure that you're laughing with somebody and not at somebody.
Right.
Because that's one thing I've noticed too, in terms of the mudslinging on both sides, is people are laughing at the other candidate or making fun. And that's not what Beth and I are talking about. We mean like laughing with somebody in order to cope. I think that we've lost our sense of humor, our sense of empathy for one another, and our sense of community, what it's like to come together. And I feel like the majority of the time when we come together, it's usually through adversity or when something bad happens. So let's get back to the point where we're coming together in a good time and not necessarily out of tragedy.
I agree. So as we're winding down this episode, I want you to think about, for you, what makes sense and what is one change you can make if you are experiencing a high level of anxiety and stress that is either going to help you feel like your voice is being heard or help you take less information in so you can keep your anxiety low and your blood pressure low. And can you take one action step towards that?
Exactly. And thinking about how can I be able to engage in self-care to take care of myself during this time, whether it's exercise in addition to cutting back on the news, being around more people, whatever it may be, where you can have your safe space or your space of grace to be able to cope through this election time.
I like that. Your space of grace.
Yeah.
I like that.
As always, we want to hear from you. So like Beth mentioned, really think about what we've talked about today. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to call or email us or reach out on Twitter. We definitely want to hear from you.
Yes. And as always, please take care and stay grounded until next time.
Until next time, take care.
Oh yeah, Wellness Wednesday with Beth and Robin. Gonna settle it down. Oh yeah, get your feet planted on the ground.
For more podcasts with the blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to leave us some feedback, give us a call at 612-367-6093. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.
Wellness and taking care of ourselves. It's all about you and taking care of yourself. Oh yeah.
When we share
what we see
through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations and the realities
of blind abilities.
and the realities of blind abilities.